It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another vintage mint on card. Star Wars market update. All of these prices are recent sales prices on eBay, and all of them except for two are auctions. So we know that this is really good fair market value estimates for some of these in case you are looking. And thanks as always to my Patreon supporters. You guys allow this channel to happen. They get my videos 24 hours early access. Patreon.com/actionfiguregrader is where you can go to sign up for as little as $1 a month. Let's go ahead and take a look at some vintage items. We're going to cover everything from 12 backs all the way through the droids and Ewoks line. So I've got the entire gamut of vintage Kenner Star Wars figures. Let's start off with these beautiful graded 12 backs that this seller had at auction, and they were some stunners. The first one is a 12-back C3PO graded AFA 80. Beautiful clear blister, punched example with the Kmart price sticker. 75, 80, 90, I believe is the, yes, a figure score of 90. That's a really nice example there of C3PO. That one sold for $935 in an auction. I thought that was a pretty good deal. That's a price I'd pay in a heartbeat. And I assume that the price was held down a little bit because of the price sticker, because it was punched versus unpunched. But if you are looking for 12 backs and you don't want to pay the insane prices that some people do pay for high grade 12 backs, this is a good example of what to look for. Look for a card or one of the subscores being in the 75 range. That automatically drops the final sales price down quite a bit because very discerning, deep-pocketed collectors, they only want 80 and 85 and 90 subscores. So when you see a subscore of a 75, get your radar up because your price is probably going to be a little bit lower than you expect. And again, if it's got a price sticker and it's punched, probably going to end towards the lower end of the value range. So all of those factors combine to keep that under $1,000. And these are the kind of items I look for, right? I talk about that all the time. Punched examples, 80 grades overall, with a 75 subscore and a price sticker that's not too ugly like the Toys R Us price stickers sometimes. They could be placed in an area that really detracts from it aesthetically. This is the kind of item I target to keep my budget down. Next up, the same seller had a JCPenney price sticker, unpunched though, 12-back C R2-D2 graded AFA 80. And so I know it's not the same character, but this is the kind of example that goes for a higher price, right? It's unpunched. Now, it does have the price sticker, but it's still sold for $15.25 in an auction. And all of the subscores were 80s and 85s. So you're going to be paying a little bit more for something like that. Now, this one did have a little bit of card wave to it. But despite that card wave and despite the price sticker, it's still sold for $15.25, which is more than I'm willing to pay for it. But I can understand how some collectors would be willing to pay for it because it is really nice. So that's the number on that 12-back C R2-D2. Me personally, if I'm going to aim for a 12C R2-D2, I've seen them sell in similar grade, maybe punched instead of unpunched, in that 1200 and under range. So that would be my price target. It's about 1200. Here was a 12-back C Han Solo. And this one sold for a lot because it is Han Solo. And it was an AFA 80. Now, this one kind of went against the grain as to what my target is, right? It had a 75 subscore, and it was also punched. But it did not have a price sticker, which makes this pretty aesthetically pleasing. And the card was really straight. There was no wave to it. It still sold for $17.14. And again, I think if it had all 80 or 85 subscores and it was unpunched versus punched, probably going to be closer to $2,000. But this is the kind of item that's outside of my price budget, outside of my collecting focus. I wouldn't be spending that kind of money personally, but do I think it's a bad deal? No, I don't think it's a bad deal. Any kind of 12-back for the main characters in this kind of condition, you're probably going to be paying about this price, unfortunately. Next up, we had an ungraded Hammerhead. Now, this is kind of right in my wheelhouse for what I would be willing to pay. It was clear blister. It was punched. No price sticker. No cracks in the blister that I could see. Probably would grade pretty easily an 80 overall. And it sold for $5.95. Bingo. That's right down my wheelhouse. And I didn't buy this, but I wish I had now. I think that, if you got this graded, spent about $100 to get it graded after grading cost and shipping to and from. Let's call it round numbers, about $100 to $125 to get graded. And it would probably come back with an 80. and you would be sitting on an item where you have about $700 to $750 in it. Is it worth it for a this is a 41. This is really a 21 back A. It's mislabeled on the eBay listing description. This is the 21A. And if you got this one, after grading fees for about, let's call it $750 all in, you got some equity there, in my opinion. I think it's worth more than $750 once it's graded in an AFA 80-ish kind of condition. So I think that was a good buy at $595. Here was a beautiful example of the 45 back Death Star droid. And one caveat on this one, it was graded AFA 85, and with straight 85 subscores and unpunched, no price sticker. Now, the seller did disclose that the blister was lifting in the upper right-hand corner. You can see where it's starting to lift just a little bit. So it probably would not hold up with an 85 grade. It was still fully sealed, but it was starting to pull up on that corner right there. So I think that a grading company would probably not give this a blister score of 85 anymore. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know how they grade card back lifting or blister lifting from the card back, but this was obviously has lifted since grading, and that's the risk you take buying these vintage mint on card Star Wars figures, is that the glue, the seal holding that blister to the card back, can start to degrade over time. These are 40+ year old figures. This is from, I forgot what year, 1980, 1981, right? So we're talking an item that is 23 years old. 43 years old. My math is off. 43 years old for this 45 back. So my gut says that this is no longer an AFA straight 85s anymore because of that blister lift. It's still sold for $600 though. So it was all disclosed. So shout out to We Buy Star Wars. They had some beautiful loose graded as part of this auction lot that we'll cover in a different video. But I don't think that it would still get the 85 grade from the grading companies if this was cracked and resubmitted for grading. I don't know that for a fact though. But a beautiful item nonetheless. I mean, again, it's the risk you take. So be aware that if you start buying some of these vintage Star Wars figures mint on card, you can see from right about here to there, there's about an inch to an inch and a half area where that blister is starting to pull away from the card back. So just be aware of that. Here is another example of the free 4-LOM offer 47 back Boba Fett, unpunched, pretty pristine condition. We documented one that Lee's Toy Review had in very similar condition that sold for over $4,000. This one sold in an auction for $35.81, and it looks to be in about the same condition. This has an outside chance at an 85 grade from the grading company. So it's absolutely stunning condition, but that just shows you that photos make a big difference, because Lee's Toy Review used a white box or a light box, and it was pretty high definition photos. This one, it's just kind of sat on a corner here, and I would argue that it's about the same condition, but it ended up selling for between $500 and $1,000 less than what the one that Lee's Toy Review had. So again, maybe it goes a little bit less because it had a little slight scuff right there to the left of the hang tab, but I think it has an outside chance at an 85 grade overall, just like that Lee's Toy Review example did. Maybe it doesn't, because it does have degradation on the figure, which is common for these ESB Boba Fetts. So maybe it gets like an 80 or 85 for the card, an 85 for the blister, and then a 75 for the figure to get you that overall 80 or 80 plus. I don't know. But still, $35.81 is a lot more palatable to the budget versus $4,000 to $4,500, whatever that one sold previously about 2 or 3 months ago. Beautiful example though, in an auction, $35.81. Here is one I sent out to my Patreon supporters in an auction alert. This was a clear blister, clear inner tray, UK 75, 65 back B Luke Jedi. 85, 75, 90 were the subscores on this one, and it was clear. Look how clear, crystal clear, that blister and the inner tray are. This is as close as it gets to factory fresh. It's a shame it had this ding on the left-hand side of the blister. That's what kept the overall score down to a 75. It is not a average of the subscores, okay? That's something I still get questions about in my comments. 80, 75, 90 were the subgrades for it, but it still got the 75 because the ding on that blister was bad enough, quote unquote, bad enough to keep the overall score down to a 75. It's not an average of the subscores. Just keep that in mind. And again, I still get those questions a lot. And I understand that. But if you got one subscore that is quote unquote bad enough, they're going to bring the whole score down to a 75. So this is appropriately graded a 75, in my opinion, because that blister ding was pronounced enough that it brought the whole grade down. It still sold for $421, which is a bargain. That's a price I would have paid for all day long. Unpunched, no price sticker. I should have bid on it. I don't know why I didn't. But I sent it out to my Patreons. And, oftentimes the way I work is if there's something I wouldn't mind having in my collection like this, if I've already sent it to my Patreon supporters as an auction alert, it feels disingenuous to me to bid on it myself. Now, I've done it before, but very rarely, okay? I've changed my mind and said, I really want that item. But very rarely. I think I've done it maybe once, if twice, out of hundreds of items I've sent to my Patreon supporters. So I don't feel too bad about it when I actually change my mind on it. It's very rare. But this is one, looking back at it, I kind of wish I had bought it because it's impossible to find a clear blister, clear inner tray Luke Jedi for that price. That is a bargain of a price, and congrats whoever got that one. I hope it was a Patreon supporter. Next up, another one that was picked up by my Patreon supporter. This was a buy it now situation for a 77 back A Leia in her indoor combat poncho. What's unique about this one is it was slightly yellowed, but only slightly, but it had the SKU running change sticker on the upper left-hand corner. I've got an AT-AT driver with this same thing. And what that means is that the printed SKU number that was on there originally, Kenner changed it to a different SKU number, so they slapped this sticker on it since these were already made. They were already manufactured in the Kenner factory, but had not been shipped out to retailers yet. So they slapped this new SKU sticker on it for tracking purposes and then sent it out. And again, I've got an AT-AT driver just like that. It's kind of a cool, very minor variation that, if you wanted to get a 77 back A Leia Endor without the running change sticker and then one with, it's kind of a cool variation. That's going deep down the rabbit hole in terms of variations for card backs, but it's something that some people do. So pretty cool item for $215. I think it gets an overall 80 grade. Congrats who got that. I know who did. It was a Patreon supporter because I sent that out as a buy it now alert, and they did buy that and told me they did. So congrats on that one. Next up is a beautiful, this was stunning, Tri-Logo R2-D2 pop-up lightsaber. Now, it did have yellowing to the blister, but the blister itself was in great shape, probably 80 grade for the blister, 85 for the card, 80 or 85 for the figure. Just light rippling to the sticker on the R2-D2 pop-up saber. It sold for 820 pounds, which is 1,041. Absolute bargain, in my opinion, if you can live with the yellowing to the blister. A lot of these blisters for the Palitoy Tri-Logo last 17, they tended to yellow. That was just something that happened. And certain other figures did too, like Luke Jedi on the Palitoy Tri-Logo, Reese on the Palitoy Tri-Logo. Those are two that yellow very commonly. I have both of those, the Reese and the Luke Jedi, in my collection, and both of them are yellowed. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's very faint. It's not nearly as bad as US Return of the Jedi card backs, but a lot of these last 17 and certain other characters do yellow, whether it's some kind of interaction between the figure plastic, the certain figure plastic for that certain character and the blister, or it could be they just started using a different type of blister later in the Palitoy manufacturing run for these Tri-Logos. I don't know. I'm sure somebody does, but I don't. Nevertheless, I still would pay $10.41 all day long for this. This was a stunner. Absolute deal there. I've got some Power of the Force figures. Pretty wide disparity in some of these prices, but it all comes down to condition, right? This one had the UFO flying saucer hang tab version with the wider UFO version of the hang tab for the A-Wing pilot. It did have a crease in the lower right-hand corner. That one sold for $268. Probably overall either a low 80 or a 75 plus. We also had I thought we had another A-Wing pilot, but maybe not. Here is a Emperor on the Power of the Force card, always expensive. This one did have some damage, though, by the hang tab, along with 2 price stickers. Still sold for $422, though. Here's the other A-Wing pilot. This one was arguably in better condition, maybe not. It did have some condition issues. Still sold for $425. So $268 for this one versus $425 for this one. I don't know which one was a better condition. They both seem pretty similar to me, but who knows? I can't predict what some of these prices are going to go for on these Power of the Force card backs. It's just kind of all over the map, and you really got to zoom in on the figure condition. This one to me presents better. This one also did have the different hang tab, not the big UFO saucer hang tab. It's more the traditional thinner hang tab, but both of those were really nice. Here was the EV99 in excellent condition, easily overall an 80 grade, and this one was unpunched, no price sticker. That one sold in an auction for $521. We had an AFA 80 punched example for the Imperial Gunner. That was a beauty. That one sold for $522. That's the lowest price I've seen for a graded mint on card Imperial Gunner for a while. Usually the kind of going rate's about $700. So $522 is a good deal to me. That's a price I would have paid in a heartbeat. Here was a KB Toys Overstock 2-pack with the Gamorrean Guard and Greedo, and it was actually structurally in much better condition than most of these 2-packs. As I've talked about in past videos, these were thrown into bins in KB Toys retail locations, and so most of them are really beat up. This one was actually in great shape. Look how good the card was. It only had some minor creasing, and the blister itself was also in very good shape, fully sealed as well. And it sold for a big money as a result, $541 in an auction, 44 bids on that one. Here was a really rough Tig From, but really what you're buying here is a near mint condition figure and coin on a really rough card back. This would be fun to submit to grading because it would be like an AFA 30 or 20 for the card back. The blister's probably like a 50 or 60, and then you'd have an 85 for the figure. So it would be a huge disparity from low to high for the subgrades of like 30 to 85. But a very cool item, and $551 took that home. I've seen as high as, on a higher grade example, for over $1,000 for Tig From. So that was a cool lower grade budget friendly example of a mint on card version. Toy Scout 2 had some beautiful droids figures that were for sale at auction, ungraded but in sliding acrylic cases, but overall good shape. Jord Dusat sold for $136.50. Here was Uncle Gundy. That one sold for $182.50 in an auction. And then the droids unpunched version of the R2-D2 pop-up saber sold for $805, which we all know how expensive that one is. No cracks to the blister on that one. And that one seems to come down just a little bit. Usually this used to be over $1,000 for an unpunched example. $805 took that one home. Pretty good buy on that one. And then finally from Toy Scout, before we dig into some other Ewoks characters, Lady Gornish sold. This was unpunched and sold for $81. Good budget-friendly example on that one. And then here are two other ones from the Ewoks line that are very expensive. And even when the cards are not in perfect condition, like this one was not, overall probably about a $75. This Logray sold for $250 in a buy it now situation. And then this Wicket W. Warwick with the clear blister, the card back was pretty wavy, probably overall a 70 or 75. That still sold for $460, which is actually not bad given that Warwick loose complete ungraded can sell for $500 or $600 by itself. So I actually thought that was a really good deal for a mint on card version of this Ewoks Wicket, because he is a very, very pricey figure for whatever reason. These were made down in Mexico, so the Logray as well as the Wicket, so they tend to stay clear blisters since they used a different kind of blister versus a lot of the other figures from the line. Thanks as always for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at recent sales. Please leave a like, and I'll be back soon.